Good morning, everyone. My name is Stuart Gamm. I am a consultant with CriticalEdge Group. We're here for the fourth webinar in our 10-part series on what's new in GP 2013. Today's subject is what's new in fixed assets. And I think what you'll see is that there is a lot new in fixed assets, many new features, some of which are very significant. I'm presenting this material based on my experience with GP 2013 and based on conversations I've had with Microsoft technicians on a couple, to be frank, issues I've encountered. So with that caveat, let me just tell you that the presentation should be around 30 minutes. If we do go over or you have other commitments, you will not hurt my feelings if you have to leave early. So please don't hesitate to do so if you need to. The presentation is being recorded, and a PDF will be mailed to all attendees, and the recording will also be available through our website. All you folks are muted, so don't try to talk to me, but feel free to have conversations in your office if the need arises. If you have any questions, there is a question panel on your meeting, question section in your meeting panel. Feel free to send them at any time, but we'll probably save those to the end of the presentation. Okay, having said all that, here is our agenda for the day. It's very brief. I'm going to review the highlights of the upgrades. Then we're going to go into a demo, and then we'll have questions and answers. And once I go into the demo, I'm going to be staying in the application. I'm not going to be going back and forth. It's all going to be within the application. So let's go on to the review of the highlights. Okay, so as you can see, it is a pretty lengthy list, some of which you'll be thinking to yourself, why didn't they do that earlier? But let's get to it and briefly describe what they all are. First of all, fixed asset management calendars. You have the ability to create multiple calendars and have different books using different calendars, and the calendars can have short years, long years, what have you, and we'll take a good look at that when we get to the demo. The fixed asset management now handles international financial reporting standards, a separate set of books. If you're using more than one ledger, we can handle that and interact with it. Historical depreciation amounts. Old versions, if you did something to restate depreciation in closed years, the entire adjustment went to the last month in the most recent closed year. Now you have the ability to actually allocate that back to the appropriate periods. Posting in detail to general ledger. Right now, if you do a posting and you've already run your depreciation and added assets and done your retirements and all that stuff, you would get one entry that has all that combined. You now have the ability to make a separate entry for each type of transaction. So that's a nice thing. Automatically generating the next asset ID. Virtually every implementation I've done of fixed assets has asked, why do we have to keep track of the next asset? Why can't the system do that automatically? Well, that time has finally come. Fixed assets depreciation detail and fixed asset depreciation ledger reports. One issue we've always had in fixed assets is in order to get reports for the auditors, people had to do that before they ran any depreciation for the new year. Now we have the ability to not have to do that, and people can do that after running depreciation for the new year. We'll take a look at that. Book setup window update. There's a bit of a change in the book setup window. We'll take a look at that. Reverse depreciation. Previous to this version, you can only reverse depreciation one asset at a time. Now you can do it en masse, either against the entire asset group, or set of assets, or against groups that you create within fixed assets. Edit the distribution before posting batch to general ledger. You actually can see what GL accounts you're going to hit before you create the batch, and you can edit the distribution accounts. Filter on transaction type. You can actually create an entry for a specific transaction type. So if you want, you can create a separate entry just for your additions, just for your depreciations, etc. Intercompany transfers. You have the ability to transfer assets between two different GP companies. And integrate analytical accounting with fixed asset management. AA now works with fixed assets, and we'll take a look at that as well. Okay, so what's next is our demo. So let me go to that. Okay, so for those of you who have not yet seen GP 2013, this is what it looks like. I'm not going to get into how the home page works and all that stuff, but it does look different, and I like it. Hopefully you will as well. Okay, so I'm going to go through this in the same sequence you might as if you were doing a new implementation. I'm going to start with setups, then I'll add an asset, then I'll do depreciation, then I'll do the GL posting, and then we'll go to inquiries and reports. So that's the approach I'm going to take. In terms of setups, if you're going to use analytical accounting with fixed assets, the first thing you need to do in terms of setup is actually in AA, not in fixed assets. So I'm going to go to the Administration tab and go down here to Analytical Accounting Setup. There's two places you need to go. One is on the options, and you need to check this box to enable transaction dimensions in fixed assets. It's likely when you first do that, you'll get a message that says that you must post all your fixed asset transactions first. So what you'll have to do is post all your, do a GL posting for everything without restriction before you can actually turn this on. The other thing you need to do on this side of it is on the Assignment tab, you want to check the box here that says Fixed Assets as well. So that's the setup on the analytical accounting side. Everything else is going to be within fixed assets. So I'm going to go back to my Financial tab, and I got my setup window open. The first thing we're going to talk about is calendars. Significant difference of calendars. First of all, it's relocated on the window. It used to be under Utilities. Now it is in Setup. So all your setups are now in the Setup section as opposed to being spread out a little bit. If I open my calendar window, we can have multiple calendars. So I have a default calendar based on my fiscal periods, which are all calendar years right now. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my fiscal period to emulate a company being bought. So if you're a company that's currently a calendar year company and you're bought by a company that is June 30th fiscal year, for example. So maybe for I'm going to create 2014 here, and I'm going to make that 6/30/2014, and it's 6 months. So I'm creating a short period to get you in sync with your new parent. And for some reason, this is coming in with the wrong dates, so I'm going to just clean that up a little bit. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, and I will also create, no, shouldn't close that, also create 2015 as a 12-month period with the new year-end close. So now I can go back into my fixed assets calendar, and I can create a conversion calendar, and I can build a calendar based on my fiscal period setup, based on a calendar year setup. I can actually manually enter stuff as well. So I'm going to go ahead and build this calendar. So I see 2013 is calendar year, 2014 is a 6-month year, and then 2015 goes back to 12 months based on the new year-end date. So I can very easily create a fixed asset calendar, or what I would really do is modify an existing calendar to deal with a short year. The other aspect of this is if I go to this short year, GP is still going to calculate a full year's depreciation. So I could identify this as a short year and identify what percentage of the calculated depreciation I actually want to take in this year, which in this example would be 50%. And I could also go to quarters, and let me go to a 12 full calendar quarter, and you see this window has changed as well. So, but it's fundamentally the same thing in terms of how you would fill it out. put in the first and last date of each quarter, and it calculates the mid date of the quarter, which might be required for certain depreciation methods. And of course, at this point, I could build quarters for all years. So that is the calendar. It's the ability to create multiple calendars automatically from your fiscal period setup and also to identify a short year. Okay. Let's look next at the book window, the book setup window. So here is our internal book. This does not look any different. What is different is if I go to the tax book, you'll notice a difference. The current fiscal year is not grayed out, whereas it is here. Once you take depreciation against the book, you cannot edit the fiscal year. The purpose for this is to force you to do a year-end so you don't have your year-to-date depreciation have actual depreciation from 2 different years. So if I were to go to depreciate and put a 2014 date right now, it would not let me. It would tell me that I cannot depreciate beyond the current fiscal year. So in order to do depreciation for 2014, I would have to close the year. I couldn't come in here and modify it to say 2014. I'd actually have to close 2013. So that gives you a little more control over your data. Once again, this is not grayed out because I've not run any depreciation for this book, which we'll do shortly. Okay. So moving on, now I'm going to go to the company setup, and there's a lot of new stuff here. There's a checkbox to reset history in detail. As I mentioned earlier, what that means is if I change a depreciable life or a depreciable basis on an asset and do it in such a way that it's going to restate prior years that are closed, I can, by checking this box, it will actually attribute the change in depreciation to each individual period going back instead of just in the last month of the last closed year, which is what it does now in prior versions. Post in detail, if I check that box, when I do my GL posting, it will automatically create a separate entry for each different type of transaction, a separate entry for additions, for retirements, for depreciation, etc. Here is your auto-generate. It's just a checkbox, and you put the next asset ID. You can put alphas, that's fine, but it has to end in digits, otherwise it cannot increment as you add new assets. And there is only one, if you do use alphas, there's one alpha string. If I were to, if your convention now is to have FF0001 for furniture and fixtures and OE0001 for office equipment, this will not handle that. This is a single series of numbers. And once again, it can have an alpha component, but it has to end in digits. Okay, so with that setup introduction, let's go ahead and add an asset. So I'm going to go now to Cards and to General. And I'm going to add an asset that uses analytical accounting. And just as a brief overview, I only have one account that can take analytical accounting, which is 0001510, my office equipment asset account. So I'm going to add an account into that class so we can see how it works. Now this is a bit clunky right now because it is a little buggy. So the keystrokes may not seem to make a lot of sense, but for now this is how I suggest you do it. And I've been through this quite a bit of detail with the Microsoft folks over the last week, so there's no question this is what you need to do in the short run. You can override this number, of course, if you want to, but that would defeat the purpose. So I'm going to accept the next asset number, and I'm going to put a description. And we'll call this a laptop. And I'm going to pick my office equipment class. You see I only have 2 classes at the moment. Very simple setup here. And I'm going to say I acquired it today, which is the 20th, and it was a $2,500 laptop. What you need to do if you're using AA, if you're not using AA, this is irrelevant and you won't even see this field, is you need to set up aliases. So I have 2 projects set up. I'm going to put this in project 1. Okay. The other thing you need to do, once again, only if you're using AA. If you're not using AA, you could use your normal set of keystrokes, is you need to disable auto add book info. So I'm going to save this, and get all my accounts, which were created automatically. And now you see that I have the AA icon here. And in 1510, that's the only account that's going to have it. If I click on that, I see I have Project 1, which came from the alias. Okay. You could also get into this window up here, in which case you'd have to scroll through the various AA distributions if there was more than one. Or I can get at it from here. So there's a number of ways to get at the same window. If I click on this on another line, it's not going to open anything because there's no AA associated with anything other than 1510. Okay. I'm going to go here to Book, which I did not auto-create, and I'm going to select my internal book. And here I have another AA icon, and you see that has defaulted in as well from the alias. If I do not use that alias, and I add this manually after the fact, this will not work as we go on through the process. Okay, so that now the asset and the reason that it's in two places, I have no idea, but that is the way it is on the book and on the account group. So I created this asset in a way that should work fine for AA. Okay, let me go back in there and create the other book just to make sure I have that. I'm going to save that. Okay, so once again, the only thing new on the asset card itself is the ability to add AA. So now that I've done that, let's go ahead and depreciate. So I'm going to go to my routines, and I'm going to depreciate. Now I've depreciated, I've not depreciated anything on tax, and I've depreciated through January 31st on my internal book. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to depreciate tax through 12/31/12. Okay, and I'm going to quickly go back and look at my book, which, as you recall, that was grayed out. That was not grayed out before. I could have changed it. Now that I've done depreciation for this book, I cannot change it anymore. Let me go back to my routines and to my depreciation. Okay, so right now I depreciated my internal book through 2012 to 131.13, my tax book through 2012. If I change this to 01/31/13 and insert that and say depreciate, I'm going to get an error message that I cannot depreciate it because the fiscal year is, where I'm trying to depreciate into is greater than the fiscal year on the book. So I'm going to digress a little bit and go to here and do a year end on my tax book without a backup, which is a no-no. Okay, so now when I go to my depreciation, I can depreciate now through 2/28, for example, all my books. And you'll see that there is a progress bar here, which is also different from what we saw before. So there it goes, okay. The other thing that's new on this window is I can reverse depreciation. So if I depreciated through 2/28, as I have, and I realize, you know, I really shouldn't have done that. I just want my depreciation through January 31st. I can do that on all assets, or if I had created a group, I could select a group. I don't have a group, so I'm going to go ahead and actually before I do that, let's go to a card. So we see this is depreciated through 2/28, and it has year-to-date depreciation of $416. This is asset number 2. Okay, if I go back to my depreciation window, now reverse depreciation to 131 and hit depreciate. Message is the same. It doesn't indicate it's reversing, but it does. And now I go back to my card for asset 2. See, it's 131 and it's half of the depreciation. It was 416.66, now it's 208.33. And my most recent depreciation was a negative because it backed out the depreciation. So I've just reversed all my depreciation back to 131 with one button. Okay, so I've added my assets. I've done my depreciation. You might typically have some retirements as well and transfers. There's nothing new on those windows, so I'm not going to bother with those. So the next logical step in your monthly process would be to do your GL posting. This window is extremely different. Okay, so you would put your date. So let's just say it's 031/13. Now I can filter on a number of ranges, so my typical thing would be to filter from the beginning of time to the period I'm actually closing, which is 2013-001. But I could also filter on source documents, and you can see all the various source documents, so I could do one at a time if I was so inclined. I can also filter on an asset ID or a class ID. And I could do multiple filters, so I could actually build this up. But once you've built your filter, you hit Process, and here are all the things that you're going to actually post to the GL. Now I'm going to delete this. And you see all I've done is depreciation because I've added no assets in that time frame. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to hit Process without restriction, which is going to show me everything. So I go down here to my Fixed Asset Ads and pick something that has 1510. I can hit this, and I can see that the project that I set up is coming into this window. And when I post this, it will post on the GL side. It will be part of the GL entry as well. Now, if you had checked on your setup, on the company setup, this Post in Detail button, which we have set up, when you do your GL posting, even in a scenario like this where I have everything in here, it will create separate entries for each transaction type. I could do them separately individually I want by filtering on it, but if you're posting in detail, it will automatically set up a separate entry for each transaction type. The other thing I want to point out on this window that is different from prior versions is on prior versions there used to be an inquiry to look at previous GL batches, fixed asset batches that you might have posted. That does not appear on this window. If you need to see that, you need to go to Inquiry, and then at the bottom the Fixed Assets section is Batches. So I can scroll through here and see the various batches I have posted previously. Okay, and it goes through 8 because the current one is 9. So that's where you'd have to go if you want to see a prior batch. You can also drill back to your source document on that particular asset. Okay, so now I've added my cards, I've done my depreciation, I've done my GL posting. So next thing might be inquiries and reports. So I'm going to start with my financial detail inquiry to show you something there. So I'm going to go to my inquiries. I'm already on that. Okay, to financial detail. And I'm going to look at asset 2 in my internal book. And if I maximize this window, what you see here is at some point previously I changed something in depreciation which resulted in a reversal in prior periods. So you see 165.75 in, 165.75 out. It gets a little busy. It's a lot longer than it might otherwise be. If I have the option to deselect, uncheck this box, and not include reset amounts. So if I hit redisplay, all those reset amounts disappear. So all I'm seeing is the final ultimate entries that are in the books. I'm not seeing the reset amounts, the ins and the outs. So it shortens my view. It's a lot more efficient that way. Similarly, if I go to my reports, if I go to my depreciation report and depreciation detail, a couple things I want to show here before I even get to the reset amounts. First of all, you see this says current amounts. If I hit print here, I'm seeing depreciation to 1/1/13. Okay. Now, if I want to run this report for my order as of last year, and I've already run my depreciation through January as I have, that would have been a problem in the past. But what I could do now is I can select something here, and I can create an option that is always the prior month, but I'm going to do end of previous calendar year right now, and I'm going to print that. And you see now that it's only through December 31st, 2012. So I'm actually can create this report after I've done depreciation, give it to the auditor, and hopefully he'll be happy. And not just this report, but the depreciation ledger, which has more information. We'll look at that in a minute too. Okay, so I can display reset amounts. So if I print that again, you'll see that I have a lot more information on that asset too, because the reset amounts, which I was not including previously, are now back. So all these 165.75s ins and outs, we did not see those a minute ago because those are reset amounts. So you can show it either way. Okay, if I go to my depreciation ledger report, let me close that. Instead of my detail, I'll go to my depreciation ledger report. I can, once again, go to my calendar year, and I can, in addition to showing the amounts as they are now in the books, as of any given time. So you see that I'm not showing the, I'm showing this as of December 31st, 2012. So this report I can give to the auditor. It has not only individual assets, but the total cost, the year-to-date depreciation, and accumulated depreciation as of that date. I can actually show original amounts. So if I want to go back to the amount I had before I did a restatement, which I might have already closed the year with, I can actually reprint that. So if I hit print now, you see on my asset 002, I have $1,000 in depreciation, which if I show without the original amounts is $1,250. So I could show it either way, the amount it originally was or the amount that it is now after I did a restatement. So that is my inquiries and reports. So the last couple things I want to show you. One is the intercompany transfer. So that's on your transactions tab. And right here is a separate item, intercompany transfer. You would pick your destination company, okay? And you would pick the asset, of course, and the transfer type, which would typically be net book value. Now, when I look up class here, I'm seeing the classes on the destination company. As you may recall, I only had 2 classes in this company. So I picked the class in that company, the associated account group, if any, would default in, but I could change it. So I can do the settings here that I want in the destination company. I can check this box, which will, if that destination company is set up to auto-assign new asset ID, will create the asset ID based on that instead of the number coming from this company. Then just hit transfer. It would be the asset would be retired in this company as of the date here, and it will also take any depreciation from the last depreciated date through that date automatically. So it will be retired with depreciated through that date based on your averaging convention in this book, in this company, and it will be created in the other company with the net book value. So that's intercompany transfer. So the last thing I want to show you is the International Financial Reporting Standard functionality. Now, I can't do that in this company, so I'm going to change companies. I already have it open. Okay, so in this company, if I go to my financial tab and look at my general ledger setup, I have this to allow multiple ledgers. Okay, so I have an IFRS and a local ledger. So if you want to use those other ledgers in fixed assets, what you need to do is on the company setup, you have to check that box. So that box in the other company was disabled because the reporting ledgers were not on. Now it is enabled, and it's actually grayed out enabled because I've done some activity in this in this company with those ledgers, so I can't uncheck it at this point. So you need to turn that on. Having the ledgers on the GL side is not enough. You need to turn it on in fixed assets as well. Okay. Then the next setup would be you would create a new book for that. So I set up an IFRS book. I've actually set up its own calendar. Okay, So you could actually have the fiscal periods defined differently for this other ledger should the need arise. And I'm also saying post to general ledger, and I'm telling it what reporting ledger to post to, which is the IFRS. If I go to my internal book, it's going to the base ledger. This is going to the IFRS ledger. Of course, depreciation looks pretty much the same. You just have a third book to insert. So that's just another book on the depreciation window. And on the GL posting window, you have to pick a book. So you would post to the internal book for the internal base ledger from the internal book, and you would post to the IFRS book, reporting ledger from the IFRS book in the fixed assets. So that would be how you would deal with the IFRS if you need to with the fixed assets. So that is basically the demo. We've covered a lot. It's a lot to learn, but it's a lot of good stuff. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. I'd like to think that many of you will be at our next session, which is next Wednesday, and that topic is what's new in payables management, which I'm sure everyone uses, so it certainly will be a useful session. And at this point, I'll look to see if anyone sent in any questions. If you have any questions that we don't get to or you think of afterwards, you can send them to info@criticaledgegroup.com. In addition, the webinar will be posted on our website or accessible through our website, in addition to which you'll be getting a link in your email. So let me see if we have any questions. And at this point, let's see. Okay, we do have a few, which I'm glad to see. If you obtain fixed asset, is it possible to start depreciation midstream? Absolutely. So typically what we do is, in fact, virtually every implementation is, we're taking fixed assets from that are maintained on the spreadsheet into GP, and there's always one of the things we capture is two things we capture. It's year-to-date depreciation. If we're not doing this at the end, to coincide with the end of a calendar or fiscal year, and life-to-date depreciation. Those are certainly two key pieces of information that we bring in when we import assets for a new implementation. Okay, I see someone just saying, thanking me, although I'm not the person to thank, that you needed some of these features for a long time. So I'm glad you agree that some of these features are a long time coming, and some of you might feel that way about one set of features, and others may feel that way about other features. But certainly, there's something in here for everybody. Would it auto-generate asset ID that starts with different letters? The answer to that is no. If you were to, if you had the auto number as 0001 and you were to edit that with a prefix, it would not update the next number, so it would come up with 0001 again. So you can only have one set of alphas for that. So if you want to put an alpha code that indicates the asset class, that you cannot do. And that seems to be all the questions that I've gotten. Once again, if anyone thinks of something after we disconnect, please feel free to send a question to info@criticaledgegroup.com. And I, once again, thank you for your time, and I wish everyone a good day. Take care.